kua mai kala hiki a kala kau. Mai ka hoku i a ka halawai. Nā au mā kua ia ka hina alo. Ia ka akau i ka lani. O ki ha i ka lani. O we i ka lani. Nunulu i ka lani. Ka holo i ka lani. E a ka pula o ko o hui hivi kua mo'o. E mālama o ko ia māko. E ulu i ka lani. E ulu i ka honua. E ulu i ka pai aina o Hawaii. E ho mai ka ike. E ho mai ka ikaika. E ho mai ki aka mai. E ho mai ka mau popopono. E ho mai ka ike pāpālua. E ho mai ka mana. Nā au mā kua mai ka la hiki a ka la kau. Mai ka o kui a ka halawai. Nā au mā kua ia ka hina alo. Ia ka akau i ka lani. Ho ki ha i ka lani. Ho we i ka lani. Nunulu i ka lani. Ka holo i ka lani. E ia ka pulo a o ko o hana koha ia o hana. E mālama o ko ia māko. E ulu i ka lani. E ulu i ka honua. E ulu i ka pai aina o Hawaii. E ho mai ka ike. E ho mai ka ikaika. E ho mai ki aka mai. E ho mai ka mau popopono. E ho mai ka ike pāpālua. E ho mai ka mana. Nā au mā kua mai ka la hiki a ka la kau. Mai ko o kui a ka halawai. Nā au mā kua ia ka hina alo. Ia ka akau i ka lani. O ki ha i ka lani. O we i ka lani. Nunulu i ka lani. Ka holo i ka lani. E ia ka pula o ko o ngā uiwi o Hawaii nei. E mālama o ko ia māko. E ulu i ka lani. E ulu i ka honua. E ulu i ka pai aina o Hawaii. E ho mai ka ike. E ho mai ka ikaika. E ho mai ke aka mai. E ho mai ka mau popopono. E ho mai ka ike pāpālua. E ho mai ka mana. E nā kupuna o Hawaii. Mai ka manaho wā ke aia manawa. Ke kune mako maka pohivi o papa. Ua hanau ia mako mai a papa mai a hoki hou ia papa. Nā mako e mālama i nā iwi o ko mako kupuna. Nā mo'o e mālama i ko mako iwi. A ho mau kalokahi o kākou. No laila, e ho mai ka ike, e ho mai ka noeau, e ho mai ki aloha, e ho mai ka ikaika. A mama, ua no.
Honorable Mrs. and Mr. Kagaris, Honorable Mr. Ayau, Honorable Mrs. Soper, Honorable Mrs. Beer, distinguished members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, aloha mai kaku. Although we are familiar with ceremonies and acts of state in this hall, today's gathering in every way is special and different. First of all, I would like to say that it's a great honor for us to welcome you here today. And it's a privilege for us to be able to share your emotion and sentiments during this moving ceremony. In the President's office, with its communication department and in the Philatelic Museum, our attention has been focused on the iwi kupuna in recent weeks. We can now begin to understand the importance of returning the 3 iwi kupuna to their homeland and their family. It was in one of your essays, Mr. Ayau, that we first learned about the meaning of the iwi kupuna for your people. You taught us that traditional Hawaiian knowledge, values, and practices are a significant aspect of Hawaiian identity, which includes the fundamental responsibility to care for iwi kupuna, the ancestral skeletal remains. You taught us about the connection between the land and the people. That homeland for you is defined as the place in which the iwi of your ancestors are buried, as yours and those of your descendants will be. We have learned about the connection between the living and the dead. And we have learned that not only the tranquility of a person's spirit, but also the well-being of their descendants depends upon the level of protection provided to the iwi. Mahalo. Thank you for that. Out of knowledge arises obligation. From the bottom of our hearts, we ask the descendants of the kupuna to forgive us for the kaumaha, the trauma our ancestors caused their ancestors and them. Your ancestors were taken away from their homeland on a very long and unjust journey. This journey brought them to a country that is geographically and culturally almost as far away from home as it is possible to be. This injustice should never have happened. The 3 iwi kupuna that we handed over to you today came from the collection of the Jena evolutionary researcher Ernst Haeckel, known as German Darwin. We cannot completely reconstruct how they became part of the collection. We only know that Haeckel received the remains of one ancestor as a gift. Given to him by the Dr. Edmund von Bartels during a trip to Messina in 1860, Ernst Haeckel took it with him to Jena. It is still unclear how it came into Bartels' possession. However, there's no doubt that the iwi kupuna were taken illegally from Hawaii by Europeans during the colonial period. It's a paradox. While trying to understand the descent of man, the evolutionists did not understand how to respect the dignity of human beings. They did not hesitate to buy their objects of study from grave robbers and disturb the peace of the dead. Racism clearly formed the foundation of German colonial history and the early anthropology of the 19th century. Today, the need to face our colonial past head-on has become part of our basic democratic consensus. For several years now, artifacts with a colonial background have been processed in the collections of the Friedrich Schiller University. The university is very aware of its responsibility for its collections and is concerned to clarify the origins of the artifacts carefully and comprehensively. To coordinate provenance research at the University of Jena, the working group Colonial Legacy and Anti-Racist Education was set up last year. An interdisciplinary pilot project has just been completed, laying the foundations for processing the collection items from colonial contexts at our university. The researchers were able to clarify the provenance of several human remains. Like the iwi kupuna, these human remains will be returned to their countries of origin, to Namibia, Tanzania, and Papua, Indonesia. In addition to the working group, the universities of Jena and Erfurt have set up a coordination office to deal with colonial heritage in Thuringia. It's funded by the Thuringian Ministry of Science. The coordination office brings together the activities of academia and civil society in this field, initiates new projects, and contributes to a social debate on colonial heritage. It's now time to close the gap in our culture of remembrance and start a new chapter. The time for change has come. Change begins with learning, and learning begins with listening. By listening to the Hui Iwi Kuamo'o, we can learn to honor the bonds of family that connect our ancestors to us and connect us to our descendants. By listening to the Hui, we can learn how great goals are achieved, not through wrath and violence, but through love. Through love, aloha, and determination, you have succeeded in returning over 6,500 remains and items from museums all over the world, repatriating and reburying them over the course of the last 30 years. There's an old Western proverb that describes your journey. The softest water eventually breaks the stone. I'm painfully aware that we cannot turn back the hands of time. We cannot undo the sufferings and mistakes of the past. The return of the Iwi Kupuna to their homeland cannot undo this historical injustice, but it can be a first step towards healing it. Today, in honor of the Iwi Kupuna, is a day of respect for tradition and cultural heritage, family, and humanity. It's a privilege for us to return the Iwi Kupuna to you, knowing that you will protect them and that they will return to Mother Earth where they belong. May your journey be safe and may your wounds begin to heal.
Aloha mai kako, Mrs. Kakeres, Mr. Kakeres, and Mr. Ayu. Good afternoon, Council Sopper, lieber Herr Professor Rosenthal, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. It's a very special honor for me today to welcome the delegation from Hawaii and all those present. Today is a significant day. It's a very moving day for all of us gathered here, and especially for you, our distinguished guests from Hawaii. You have traveled a long way, made all the more difficult by the corona pandemic that is sweeping the world, and for that, I thank you. In my capacity as State Secretary for Culture of the Free State of Thuringia, I would like to welcome you to my hometown of Jena, and I bring you the greetings from the entire Thuringian state government. Today is a very emotional day. The homecoming of the Iwi Kupuna to their place of origin is of great significance for all of us and especially for you, dear guests, politically, culturally, and humanly. Their return shows us that justice, indeed even historical justice, will prevail in the end, even if this sometimes takes much longer than it should. The Iwi Kupuna can now return to their home in Hawaii, coming back to the island from where they were taken, coming back to the place where they belong, and coming back to the families who had to wait so long for their return. Even if after such a long time it is no longer possible to reconstruct when and under what circumstances the Iwi Kupuna came to Germany, I would like to assure you that what happened during times of colonial violence and exploitation is never and nowhere tolerable. We are continually being admonished by the history of European colonialism. I deeply regret what was done to you. The Free State of Thuringia deeply regrets it, and I sincerely ask you and the relatives of the families in Hawaii for forgiveness on behalf of our federal state. Ladies and gentlemen, provenance research and restitution have been firmly anchored in the cultural policies of the federal states and the national government of Germany for more than 30 years and are being promoted in joint nationwide projects as well as locally in the cultural and academic institutions. The focus is wide and includes cultural property seized as a result of Nazi persecution, as well as provenance research that relates to the period during the Soviet occupation in the GDR, otherwise known as East Germany. But the starting point for increased provenance research was the handling of cultural property seized under Nazi rule, which is still ongoing. Only in recent years, the discussion and reappraisal of the colonial past after decades of almost complete colonial amnesia has finally gained momentum. In 2018, the German government and the German states adopted and established key points from dealing with items of cultural heritage, and in the following year, 2019, a central contact point, the German contact point for collections from colonial context, was agreed and set up. In recent years, the Free State of Thuringia has been actively engaged in examining collections, investigating their origins, and deriving options for action. Thanks to special funding from the Free State of Thuringia, the Provenance Research Coordination Office was set up in 2021 to assist museums with an initial examination to their collections, as well as to support their needs, analysis, and applications for provenance research. Another example is the Friedenstein Palace Foundation in Gotha, which is currently conducting a research project into the provenance of 30 objects of colonial origin that have been in the ducal collection in Gotha since the 1860s. A coordination office for the study of colonial heritage in Thuringia at the universities of Jena and Erfurt was recently set up, as Professor Rosenthal mentioned. This project, in addition to all other projects, is another important building block in the cultural policy in our state because it contributes to shedding more light on the dark chapter of the colonial era using a broad historical investigation. Nevertheless, and I would like to, and indeed must make this clear, research in the colonial past and its atrocities has only just begun. There is much to be done. Especially all those who are themselves descendants of former colonized people, or those who are still excluded from the discourse by the global structures of inequality, must be able to participate meaningfully in this process. Our task and also our responsibility is to ensure this participation and to use the necessary sensitivity towards those involved when coming to terms with the past. I am therefore very grateful to the University of Jena for checking the origins of items in its collections and taking the proactive initiative to return them. Ladies and gentlemen, the examination of the past shows that colonial structures and their continuity are also influential outside so-called colonial metropolises such as Hamburg or Berlin. Thuringian connections also extended far beyond Europe. Colonialism in the periphery is so far a neglected phenomenon that we must now focus on more intensely. That is our responsibility today. With the activities in Thuringia, as just described, a broad reappraisal is taking place, the continuation of which is not a political question, but a prominent ethical imperative. I very much hope that we will gain further insights and attention with the current debates and projects so that our view of the past will be extra sharp. Ladies and gentlemen, cultural memory is changing. To live in this world, we need mutual exchange, a true exchange on equal terms. An irreplaceable building block to make the intercultural idea concrete and to broaden the horizon of experience. Let us use our meeting today as an opportunity for old wounds to heal and new doors for cultural cooperation to be opened. Herewith, and with thanks and all good wishes, I would like to hand over to you the safe passage document that accompanies your joint return, and I wish you and the Ivi Kupuna a safe journey home.
We would now like to share with you a video statement from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees Chair, Carmen Hulu Lindsay.
Aloha mai kākou. My name is Carmen Hulu Lindsay, and I am the chairperson of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees. In October 2017, representatives of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Hui Malama i nā kupuna o Hawaii nei, and our native Hawaiian community ventured to Dresden, Germany, to retrieve iwi kupuna that had been held for over a century within anthropological collections. These iwi kupuna were collected during a time of colonial violence, a time when Western society was attempting to appoint themselves as being the highest point of evolution over all others. A quest ensued in the 18th and 19th centuries on the backs of imperialist agendas that resulted in the theft and collection of ancestral human remains of many indigenous peoples around the world. Our ancestors were horrendously dehumanized and objectified for study without the consent of their families and against prevailing Kingdom of Hawaii law at the time, protecting the sanctity of the grave. Notably, this was the first restitution conducted in the state of Saxony, which also served to signify a confession of humanitarianism and respect to the Hawaiian people. Our ancestors were rehumanized, and we were made whole again by finally being able to fulfill our responsibility to return this iwi kupuna home. As this unfortunate chapter of colonialism was finally coming to a close, a new chapter of shared humanity was birthed, and a commitment was made to repeat this event with the return of more iwi kupuna in the future. Today, we are seeing this promise made good with the return of many more iwi kupuna from various institutions throughout Germany. Further, we now add Vienna, Austria, into this humanitarian family as we welcome the return of iwi kupuna from the Natural History Museum in Vienna as part of this February 2022 retrieval effort. This is the ultimate way to educate the world about each other and to reconnect these institutions to the living people of where these cultures come from. As was shared in 2017, it takes great courage and compassion to admit to one's atonement to begin the healing of the spirit. There has been much change in the last decade amongst museum professionals and anthropological scholars that demonstrates a better understanding of indigenous peoples and the past injustices committed against us. We certainly acknowledge this and applaud the rehumanization of these individuals and institutions. Today, these actions allow us to heal, not only as individuals, but as a Lahui, a Hawaiian nation. Further, we see the event of today and that of 2017 as recreating history going forward and telling a new story as fellow human beings together. As we acknowledge that other institutions throughout Germany and other places in Europe are on the cusp of joining in this shared humanity, we will indeed return soon to keep adding to this story. Mahalo for walking this road with us.
Good evening. Sehr geehrter Herr Professor Rosenthal, sehr geehrter Herr Professor Heimal, sehr geehrte Frau Beer, dear Mrs. Caceres, and dear Mr. Caceres, and dear Mr. Ayau, dear guests, aloha. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I am grateful to be here as a representative of the U.S. diplomatic mission to Germany. And on behalf of the U.S. consulate in Leipzig and the entire mission, I want to thank everyone for working so closely together to return these 3 iwi kupuna to their homeland. We would also like to express our gratitude to the Hawaiian delegation, the University of Vienna, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and the German Federal Foreign Office. Your efforts, care, and sensitivity help us forge a more hopeful future. Specific thanks to the leadership of Jena University under President Professor Rosenthal and Professor Andreas Heinold for his organizational efforts. You and the university serve as a model for others. You have shown tremendous respect and dignity for these ancestors on their journey home. Mr. Hale Ayau, thank you for your close work with the U.S. government and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The U.S. government encourages and facilitates the voluntary repatriation of ancestors and ceremonial objects. In many cases, the Department of State has connected Americans with museum personnel, supported efforts to repatriate items, and organized exchange programs to connect museums with communities. The U.S. government has also engaged in initiatives to protect iwi kupuna, prevent desecration, and raise awareness about the harm done by the buying and selling of sacred objects. We live today in a complicated world. It is helpful to look back to those who came before us in order to look forward. So coming together today is an acknowledgement of our shared humanity. Thank you. Mahalo.
Auhea o ko e nā kupuna, o ke ala pūpū I Molokaʻi, o Molokaʻi nui a hina, o Molokaʻi pule o. Auhea o ko e nā kupuna o ka ʻaina oi oi o Maui Hikina, o ka malala walu hoʻi, nā mamoa Maui a kama. Auhea o ko e nā kupuna o Hawaiʻi nui a Keawe, ka ʻaina o Keawe ena hoʻi, o Hawaiʻi nui kuauli. Eia no mākou ka o ko keiki mo o puna kekahi. A noho mai, noho mai, noho mai. Eia no mākou no ke kuleana e kiaʻi a halihali ia o ko I ko oko ne hānau I ko Hawaiʻi pai ʻaina. I hiki ke kanu hou ia I ka poli o haumea e ho ia I ka moiloa a luʻu I pō. He wahi leo mihi ke ia. I ko oko ka awale mai ka poli me hana olu o papa hānau moku. Me ko una au luʻu e mihi ai no ke ia wā lo ihi loa I ka awale mai ka ohana. E pili hou ana no. Auhea o ko e nā moʻo o ko Hawaiʻi pai ʻaina. Velina mai me ke aloha e nā kiaʻi I mālami nā iwi o ko kākou kupuna. Mai ka piʻi ana o ka lā I haʻe a hiki loa I kona nāpoʻo ana I ka moku o lehua. Mai uka I kai, mai ka hikina I ko mohana, mai luna a lalo, mai ka moana nui o ka pāki pika, ai ka puna vai nui o Muritz. Auhea o ko e ko kelemania, ka poʻe hoʻi o Ina. He wahi leo mahalo keia no ko o ko ike I ka hana kupono e hanai, no keia poʻe kupuna, a no ko kākou mau aupuni. E hoʻola ia kākou a pau, e ola. Ano ai me ke aloha ia kākou pākahi a pau. Aloha nui. I carry with me aloha from our poʻe o iwi of Hawaiʻi pai ʻaina to you, the people of Ina. My name is Kalehua Kamohalika Teres, and I stand before you as an oiwi of the Aupuni of Hawaii and as a kupa of Ma'ili Waiʻanae. Although we are separated by the vast oceans of Moana Nui Akea of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, I'm certain we share many similarities and therefore similar responsibilities. We are grandchildren, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, grandparents. Today we acknowledge another very important relationship within our family, our ancestral family, our kupuna who have moved on from this earthly realm and crossed over to the next. Wahia kupuna, ike aku, ike mai. Kokua aku, kokua mai. Pēlā ihola ka nohona ohana. Our ancestors have a wise saying, recognize and be recognized, help and be helped. Such is family life. Our colonial history has created, amongst other things, disconnection from our kupuna long departed, and with that, disconnection from our land, our language, our sovereign nation state, and oftentimes a subsequent fracturing, a kaumaha, a burden of trauma within ourselves and our people. However, one very salient and foundational value has transcended time, space, and the history of our lahui. Aloha ohana, a love of family. This enduring understanding, though, is not unique solely to Hawaii. In fact, I'm sure we can agree the world over that we all share a deep sense of love for our family. That love of ohana does not end with death. In fact, it endures in memories, in names, and within ourselves for so long as we remain connected to our loved ones that have journeyed beyond this realm and into the next. With our na'au tuned and calibrated to receive the messages of our kupuna, we are hearing our ancestral voices around us and finding them within us. We are restoring our ancestral foundation with each kupuna repatriated and returned to their eternal slumber in the bosom of Haumea, reunited with ohana. Ike aku, ike mai. We are recognizing our kupuna again, and they are recognizing us in return. Having their familial leadership stripped from our lives for several generations has caused many of us to lose our way, to lose ourselves. Reconnection to our ancestral family helps us to find our way again. We are welcoming our kupuna back into our lives and homes to continue to guide us, to inspire us, to protect us. Kokua aku, kokua mai. Kupuna and mo'opuna share a special relationship in life. They are our first teachers, our mentors, our advocates. When our kupuna transcend to po, that relationship becomes stronger when maintained and nurtured. The spiritual connection has no restraints like that of the physical realm. They continue to be our teachers, our mentors, and our advocates. Our responsibility in return is to listen to their kahea, their call, and then be exemplary in our responsive action. Our kupuna here today help to facilitate their return home. They have empowered our steps and will guide our steps back. The government of Germany, the city of Yina, the American Consulate, and the University of Yina have been instrumental in supporting our kupuna's return to Hawaii. Mahalo palena ole. Thank you for recognizing and honoring aloha ohana. Pela iho laka nohana ohana. This is a life of family. Today signifies a remarkable event in the history of the people of Hawaii and the people of the city of Yina. We have established a connection to one another through today's repatriation. We have forged a relationship that now requires a reciprocal commitment and accountability. I ask that we honor this relationship through our joint advocacy to repatriate not only Hawaii's iwi kupuna, moipu, and mea kapu, held in public and private collections, but that of all the world's nations and peoples, so that as the human race, we can heal from this selfless act of aloha. One day, you and I both will be kupuna. We will be the ancestors. We have a koleana, a responsibility to leave a lasting impact on the next generations of our families. They will inherit our legacy. Let our legacy be one of aloha ohana, a love of family. And let us leave a lasting example for them to follow, because one day, they will be the ancestors. Mahalo nui I keia hui ana o kākou. Thank you for sharing this space with us in honor of our kupuna. Kia aloha no.
O Ralph Heinrich Kuhlman Kekane, o Catherine Margareta Wiesling Kawahine, noho pūlau a Makaaina o Nienburg, Deutschland, a wahanau ia o Catherine Margareta Kuhlman he wahine. O Wilhelm Niemann Kekane o Katerina Margareta Kuhlman Kawahine, noho pūlau a Makaaina o Nienburg, Deutschland, a wahanau ia o Isla Maria Niemann he wahine. O Johann Dietrich Speckman Kekane, o Isla Maria Niemann Kawahine, noho pūlau a Makaaina o Grossenfelder, Deutschland, a wahanau ia o William Dietrich Speckman he kane. O William Dietrich Speckman ke kane o Mary ku kahiki o kalani kapu Heleola kahu ole kawahine, noho pūlau a Makaaina o Kuehu Lepo o Kau ku makae. A wahanau ia o William Kawai Poni Mo I Dietrich Speckman he kane. O William Kawai Poni Mo I Dietrich Speckman ke kane o Mary Kaleo Leolani Ko'o Kawahine. Noho pūlau a wahanau ia o Josephine Kawena Ula o Kaonohi o Kala Speckman he wahine. O Thomas John Kaneta he kane. O Josephine Kawena Ula o Kaonohi o Kala Speckman ka wahine. Noho pūlau a wahanau ia o Patricia Kawai Poni Mo I Kaneta he wahine. O Doran Moore Kaleilani Kateres Senior he kane. O Patricia Kawai Poni Mo I Kaneta Kawahine, noho pūlau a wahanau ia o Doran Moore Kaleilani Kateres Jr. he kane. O Doran Moore Kaleilani Kateres Jr. he kane, o Susan Avapuhi Hui Hui Kawahine. Noho pūlau a wahanau ia o Mana Kaleilani Kateres he kane, o Vaono o Mana Kaleilani Kateres. Ola kahaloa o ka Ohana Speckman. Aloha kākou un guten Tag. We left the shores of Hawaii this past Saturday. We didn't arrive to Germany. We landed in Bremen on Monday. And we had just overnight to prep for our first repatriation. That was on Tuesday. And I woke up in the middle of the night, which we sometimes do for those of us who malama kupuna. And I had a sudden urge to look into my genealogy and my mo'okuauhau, as we call it, or my pedigree. And that is a branch of that which I just shared with you folks. And I've always known that William Dietrich Speckman, one of my third great-grandfathers, was from Germany. But I never really followed my own genealogy in that direction. I never really was pulled not even in that direction, in this direction, because we're here in Germany right now. And William Dietrich Speckman was just the first German name in a long line of Hawaiian names until early morning this past Tuesday. I was able to research and find out that William Dietrich Speckman's parents, what their names were, his grandparents, his great-grandparents. William Dietrich Speckman was born in Grossenfelder. He sailed across the Atlantic Ocean once he left Germany, and he reached New York. He traveled across North America. He boarded a ship in San Francisco bound for Hilo, Hawaii, where he met Mary Ku Kahiki o Kalani Kapu, Haleola Kahu Ole, and forever established a kingship between Hawaii and Germany, not just for my family, but for many other Hawaiian families with German ancestry. 4 generations after William Dietrich Speckman left his homeland of Germany, I stand before you, his descendant, honoring the very concept of Ohana, family. Not just the paper or the pedigree part of Ohana, but the responsibilities and accountabilities and acknowledgments that come with that. We are here today because the people of Yina, and more specifically, the University of Yina, they honor, you honor, and acknowledge the responsibilities that we all have as grandchildren to take care of our grandparents. That is what today is all about, honoring that pilina, that relationship between grandparent and grandchild. Today's repatriation allows us to accompany our kupuna home, back to Hawaii, and we are the stewards that will send them off on their journey back to Paul. To the University of Yena, mahalo for this opportunity to reconnect to the land of my German ohana. Mahalo for giving me this opportunity to honor and care for my Hawaiian grandparents and ancestors, and as well as honor my German kupuna. To all the people of the world whose ancestors were stolen, removed from their homeland, and spread out across this planet, your ancestors are waiting. Last but definitely not least, e ku'ulahu ie e na oivi o ko Hawaii pai aina. Our ancestors are also waiting. In closing, I would like to offer 3 points of gratitude for the University of Yena. The first mahalo or gratitude, thanks that I would like to share with you folks is your willingness to recognize your colonial past. That is something our own colonizers are still having trouble doing. So we greatly appreciate that. It is the first step to healing. You have to recognize what was done. So mahalo. The second point of gratitude I'd like to share is the apologies that we've been given earlier during this ceremony. It's the second step towards healing. Not just an apology, but a heartfelt one. After the transgression is recognized, the apology comes. And the most important and third, but not the last, it's the important one, is the restitution. The apology can only go so far, but the steps you have taken to try and right the wrongs by letting us leave here today with our kupuna and take them home with us is the greatest gift and the most important step towards healing, not only for us, but for the people of Yena also. So I'd like to offer those 3 points of gratitude for you folks. And I'd also like to hope that the University of Yena can serve as an example to our very own colonizers who still refuse to recognize their colonial past. And it's not even colonial trauma that was done years ago. We're still living through it today. So to be able to come, like you had mentioned earlier, sir, this is almost as far away from Hawaii as you can get. And to come this far and to feel the aloha that you have for our ohana is amazing. So thank you. Mahalo.
Aloha. The title of my remarks tonight is Imana i Ka'uiwi, Hawaiian Humanity Empowered by Repatriation. To Professor Walter Rosenthal, President of the University of Yena, Dr. Martin Fisher, Professor Dr. Andreas Hainal, Secretary for Culture, Tina Beer. To my kumu, my teachers, Edward Lavan, Hui Hui Kanahele, and Pualani Kanahele Kanakaole. My parents, Reynolds Lea Aloha Ayau, and Morel Moanekeala Ka'eo U'u. To my grandmothers, Harriet Ahiona Ayaune, Hilda Na'ohio Kamalu Bishal, and Lady Poi Poi U'u. To all my siblings, my entire ohana, my family. To OHA Board of Trustee Chair Hulu Lindsay, to OHA Ka Pohana Sylvia Hussey, to Compliance Enforcement Manager Kai Markel, repatriation advocate, and again, the future of Hawaiian repatriation, Mr. Kamakana Ferreira. To Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement CEO Kuhio Lewis and Wahine Mana out of this world, Mihano Kala Hind, and especially for their generous financial support for our travel. To my keiki, Mariana, Keonauna, Kaneaulono, Haianaala, and Kuaea. To Lachlan Soper, Council for Public Affairs, U.S. Consulate General, Leipzig. To my heroes, George Jared Helm, Hawaiian German. Walter Riddy, Emmett Aluli, Atwood Makanani, Kyoki Peskaya, Kanoho Helm, Kekama Helm, heck, all the helms from Molokai. Noel Kahanu, Kale Koakael, Dr. Kamana Opono Crab, Khalil Manuel, Jonathan Scheuer, Miss Hinale Moana Wangkalu, Kihei Nahalea, Dr. Philip Sorsch, Dr. Larissa Forster, Mr. Holger Stoiker, Dr. Cressida Ford, Dr. Paul Turnbull, Dr. Amber Adanui, Dr. Timothy McEwen, and Honor Keeler of Return, Reconcile, Renew, Walter Echohawk and John Echohawk of the Native American Rights Fund, Alan Murakami and staff of the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, Kahu David Kaupu, and Kahu Ken Makuakane, all of our Po'e Hawaii who are at home watching us now, all of those who are here today, and especially to our kupuna, for whom we are gathered today to acknowledge their humanity. Aloha no kako. Ola naivi is an alelo no eau, a proverb that means the bones live. It is said about an elder who is well cared for by his or her parents or his or her family, and a reference to those who provide such care. The international repatriation of iwi kupuna, of ancestral remains, and moipu, funerary possessions, is a dutiful expression of Hawaiian cultural traditions that place high value on all that is ancestral, especially the sanctity of human remains, funerary possessions, and places of burial. The traditions of family, care, responsibility, and protection are paramount to an interdependent relationship in which the living and the deceased look after one another. One's role in the family does not end with death. It elevates to that of ancestral guardian. And it is the role of the living to protect the dead, to protect their places of interment, to protect the dignity of the afterlife. In turn, it is the role of the deceased, when called upon, to provide living descendants with the necessary tools, including courage, strength, intelligence, righteous understanding, and avenues of communication. For the past 32 years, efforts by Native Hawaiians to return iwi kupuna and moipu from domestic and foreign institutions were undertaken to continue restoration of our ancestral foundation, to return spiritual energy we call mana to our homeland and to living descendants, and to support the rebuilding and empowerment of all that is Hawaiian, beginning with our dignity, ancestral and living, that will no doubt culminate with the reestablishment of our Hawaiian kingdom. With regard to the authority that we rely upon to repatriate, Hawaiians have been able to get international institutions to return our ancestors absent express legal authority through the assertion of the value of aloha. You see, there are certain self-truths that are so fundamental, so pure and beautiful that they cannot be denied. Reuniting families through restitution and reburial out of solemn respect for the sanctity of the grave is one such self-truth. It does not require justification because it is the justification. It is the essence of aloha that is the source of our authority to repatriate. Love for those who came before us, which is best explained by the following family mo'olelo of history shared by Dr. Kamana Beamer. Quote, "The story of the 1819 Battle of Kuamo'o has been in our family for generations. My grandmother shared the courage of our ancestors to support traditional religious laws in the midst of tremendous social change. This story is filled with tragedy, as our ancestors, severely outgunned, perished at the hands of opposing forces. It is also a story of hope, expressed in the words of Monono. Malama ko aloha, keep your love. After her husband, Kekuokalani, had been killed. Her words were a plea to both sides that no matter what obstacles come, keep your love for one another, powerful guidance for future generations, unquote. Aloha is a shield to protect us from the harm caused by the repeated knowledge of the desecration and theft of our ancestors' remains. Aloha can be a spear to be asserted when museum officials or scientists refer to the ancestors as osteological material, their property, or to their ownership of the iwi kupuna. Hawaiian ancestors made it to create loving families, not to create osteological material. Aloha is that ultimate place of refuge and safety when our ancestors are objectified and dehumanized, which in turn objectifies and dehumanizes us, their living descendants. There is no statute of limitations or legal prohibition on the assertion of aloha in any part of the world. And it is the authority by which our delegation, Hui Iwi Kuamo'o, come here today to retrieve these additional ancestors from Iena and escort them home, and the authority by which we will continue to do so. At the handover ceremony at the Dresden Museum of Ethnology on 23 October 2017, the day after the iwi kupuna were ceremonially prepared for the journey home, Dr. Marian Ackerman, Director General of the Dresden State Art Collection, stated, quote, "The restitution of human remains is of great importance. It is an act of humanity," unquote. Dr. Eva Marie Stange, State Minister of Science and Arts of the Free State of Saxony, it said in referring to the iwi kupuna housed at the Dresden Museum, quote, "In this case, they became scientific objects. Today, after more than 100 years, we are looking at these collections from a different angle. They are being rehumanized. For us, these are no longer objects. They are the mortal remains of human beings. With their return, we are giving back their value to the deceased persons and their families. Their life stories made them victims in the names of science and colonialism," unquote. In reflecting on what the Dresden repatriation effort meant in the larger scheme of things, Ms. Noel Kahanu, a Hawaiian wahine mane in her own right, experienced in repatriation and reburial, and who has written on indigenous perspectives of museum issues and participated in the ceremonies at Dresden that day, writes the following, quote, "Someone asked recently, what is the future direction of repatriation? I responded that we should look at those examples rising from the international context. These returns happen not because the federal law mandated it, but because of individual and institutional relationships that have developed over time, because doors were opened by those who understood the humanity in returning iwi kupuna to their homelands. And if we can open a door, we can also hold it open for the next group petitioning for the return of their ancestors. It is a network of people working together inside and outside of museums, redefining ethics and reasserting notions of human dignity that will bring the last of our iwi kupuna home. In doing so, we will be liberating museum relations into the future." Although the 26-year-long case at Dresden was fraught with incredible hardships, Dr. Stange then wisely opines, quote, "An inglorious chapter is being closed, but at the same time, a new page for better chapters is now being opened in the book of history, on which we will write together," unquote. In conclusion, today, let us celebrate our respective humanity, the Hawaiian and the German people. Let us continue the journey to write the second chapter of this book of history, with the first iteration being the Übersee Museum on February 8th, and the second being Göttingen University yesterday. And let us do so together by Malama ko aloha. Let us keep our love for one another. The valuable lessons learned over the past 3 decades by the impacts of repatriation is that it has allowed Hawaiians to restore our dignity, to restitute our Hawaiian humanity. Ola naivi, the bones live. Before I step away, I wanted to send a mahalo to our Po'e Hawaii at home who've been following our efforts and for their prayers for us to have the courage and the strength to sleep 2 or 3 hours a night, drive 3 hours, and retrieve our kupuna. Mahalo nui. And I leave you all with this lesson that I was taught by my kumu. Lesson number 1 in the work that we do is do not fear your ancestral shadow. And what that means, because we've been so colonized and Christianized that we forget about our ancestral families. Love God, but love your kupuna too. And where necessary, malama them and bring them home. Mahalo nui.